Welcome to Second Shift Playbook, the essential podcast for women navigating the dual demands of professional careers and home responsibilities.
This show is dedicated to the millions of women who've had to make the tough choice between their careers and caring for their families, and to those who strive daily to balance both.
In a world where women, especially women of color, in high-stress fields like the medical sector and academia, face the daunting challenge of the second shift at home, we're here to offer support, guidance, and empowerment.
Our mission is to shine a light on the stories of resilience and determination, to discuss the policies and changes needed to support women fully, and to explore how we can all contribute to a more equitable society. Each episode features conversations with trailblazing women like Tia Williams, the best-selling author and beauty editor at Tom Ford, Lily Panchasarp, an innovative account executive at Disney,
Pamela Price, the dedicated Deputy Director of Balm and Gilead Incorporated, and Michelle Geathers, the Visionary Chief Diversity Officer and Head of Corporate Responsibility at Visa.
These remarkable women share their journeys, the obstacles they've overcome, and their strategies for managing the complex interplay of work and home life.
Second Shift Playbook isn't just a podcast.
It's a movement towards creating a world where women don't have to choose between their careers and their families.
As a retired anesthesiologist who has dedicated my career to serving the people of North Carolina through health equity and policy change, I am now committed to advocating for women's empowerment and policies that uplift us all.
As a PhD in sociology, public health researcher, and entrepreneur, I have a deep understanding of stigma and discrimination, emotional intelligence, social psychology, and stress management. I've dedicated my career to advocating for marginalized communities to access resources, and am now committed to advocating for women to become financially independent and fully empowered to navigate life's challenges. Join us as we delve into the realities, the struggles, and the victories of working women everywhere. Together, we can redefine what it means to work and live in harmony, supporting one another through the challenges of the second shift. Welcome to Second Shift Playbook. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Second Shift Playbook. I'm Dr. Allison Matthews, and I'm here with my colleague, Charlene Green. We are so excited to be talking to you about, just work-life balance. How do women, especially women in professional environments, how do we navigate our lives, right? And so the kind of premise behind Second Shift is actually a nod to Dr. Arlie Hochschild, who's an author who talked about the second shift, about how women work full work days, and then when they get home, they got to do a whole second shift of work, working on your household, working with your families. And honestly, like, I'm a single woman, I don't have any children, but I feel like I still have a second shift dealing with my family and with the household and all the other responsibilities. And so we're here today, and with this podcast, to really dive into these topics and find ways together as women to navigate these issues. So I'm Dr. Allison Matthews. I would like to say, the voice of the liberated Black woman. I like to push the boundaries. I like to be an entrepreneur, and I'm passionate about social justice. Charlene?
Yes, I am Charlene Green. I'm a physician. I'm an anesthesiologist. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. And I am really interested in how we can get public education back to where it was years ago with subject matter learning. I'm really into environmental justice. But more importantly, I'm into how do we as women find that work-life balance that works for us. It's individual at times, but I think collectively we need to work together to have more policies in our infrastructures that is not misogynistic and that is leaning towards equity and what the world is really about. Women with children, and women who are excellent at what they do and able to navigate a more flexible lifestyle. Thank you.
Yeah. So what's happening in the news this week or recently that's kind of popping up related to women? Anything that you heard about, Charlene?
Well, the only thing that I've heard about just recently is, I've been following that Colorado football team, and I know that Deion Sanders is always talking about his daughter as a basketball player. That is one of his rock and solid, inspiration. So I'm just in. I'm just always interested in dads who understand their daughters and give them kudos to what they're doing. Particularly as her as an athlete. I think female athletes sometimes are underrated as regards to their work ethics and what they do, but they work just as hard as the male athletes, particularly the collegiate athletes. And it was on my mind to just say that about the Title IX athletes. So yeah.
That makes me think about Coco Gauff, who just
Yes.
won, yeah, the U.S. Open. That's amazing. They said she's
And
the first youngest uh, winner, I think, since Serena Williams. Yeah.
yes, so Serena won it at 17. I think she won it at 19. But the most profound thing that I thought happened at the U.S. Tennis championship was what her speech was about the haters.
Mm.
I don't know if you guys heard that or not. Basically, she said, I want to give a shout out to all those people who didn't believe in me. And basically, the haters that you all thought that I was not going to be anything. And I'm just paraphrasing that somewhat. And look where I am now. So I just want to thank you for giving me that fire to push me forward. And I just thought that was pretty profound because a lot of times in the workplace, no matter if you're an athlete, if you're in corporate America, if you're a physician, if you're a lawyer, you have to, as an African American woman or a minority, work in a space at times where people may, think that you don't deserve to be there or that you don't have the expertise. And that's a really big struggle sometimes for people that may have imposter syndrome. So, I just thought that she was speaking for all people when she was just basically saying, hey, I'm going to persevere no matter if people don't like me or not. So I thought that was interesting.
Shout out to all my haters. um, so that actually brings us into our guest for today. We're so excited to bring in Lily Panchasarp. Lily's a high school friend of mine. We went to Ursuline Academy together in Dallas, Texas, and she has just become a boss in her own right. Worked in sports, former ESPN executive, and then now working at Disney as an account executive in marketing. So we are just so excited to have you on, Lily. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. I loved the opening and I was so eager to join in on the conversation. So yes, I'm Lily Panchasarp. I'm now the director of our national sales team. So I lead a few of account executives that are driving revenue for Disney advertising. And what that means is we're trying to push our content. So under the Disney portfolio, which I know Disney is very large, right? We have our studios business, we have our parks, experiences and products. And then what my arm in the world at Disney is streaming and media networks. So that's Hulu, ESPN, ABC, National Geographic, FX, ABC Freeform. So there's a lot of content buckets within my purview, and I get to work with marketers, Fortune 500 companies, but also the emerging brands as well that are trying to marry their message and their content into the right audience and into the right environment that can ultimately sell more goods and services. So that's me, but I am, as Allison mentioned, a sports fan through and through. I am from Dallas, Texas, like Allison. So go Cowboys.
Yeah.
Our week 1 opener was amazing versus the Giants. So I am a big sports fan, and I moved from Dallas to New York just for a big change. And I've been with the Disney company, but under the ESPN umbrella since 2010. And I've been in sports and now across all of the entertainment. So the Coco Gauff conversation. Like, exactly. It's that. It's that she said, you try to put water on on the fire to like let me sink, but it actually brought more fuel to me to
Yes.
rise. So she is
Love.
a great indicator of what, again, and Charlene, you were saying about female sports, like what ESPN is really looking forward, and especially now with LSU winning the national championship for the NCAA, like we are seeing such fandom in that space. And I know ESPN and the Walt Disney Company is we want to lean into it. We want to make sure that content is at the forefront with prime time slots to make sure that, hey, women's sports, it's dramatic, it's fun, and it's very engaging, and advertisers should want to be in that space as well. So sorry, that's a preamble of what I do at
but I've
So
seen
you were probably really impressed. You know, this is the big news. Hopefully I'm not getting this wrong, but apparently the volleyball team in Nebraska, right,
Nebraska
had
yep.
the highest number
That's what
of
I was
people
gonna say.
coming to their volleyball team.
It
So
was
in the
like
past, people didn't think that women could bring all these fans to the sports, but that's been such not the correct thing to think about. So I was so proud of that. I'm not a real fan of volleyball particularly, but I just was so happy to see that number of crowd came to see the volleyball championship. I also want to just mention something that you said about your company. I love Disney. And when I was growing up, my family visited Disney a lot. And we were in 1970s, probably late 60s, early 70s. I think we were the only family in our neighborhood that went and stayed at the Polynesian Hotel, which was a big deal in 1970s. So we stayed at the Polynesian Hotel with the trees coming out of the floors. And it took me until, I was probably about 40 years old to understand that was a big deal for my parents to be able to do that for us, and experience that. But we always stayed at the Polynesian Hotel, took the monorail to the park. And so the Disney experience is real. And I just hope that many young children get to experience that, at least each year, because it's really important to know that, something like that exists in this country. And I'm very proud of it. And I'm not saying that because, we're talking to you, but, I've been to Disney in Tokyo.
Oh wow.
And,
real
and,
fan you are.
And the Disney in Tokyo is a little bit subdued because the Japanese are a little subdued as well. But that experience is still there. But I like the Disney in Orlando.
Perfect. I mean, Disney, like coming to LA, that's where I'm located now, even though I was in New York City for 15 years. But Disneyland is very fun. I will take anyone that wants to visit me in LA.
I've been to Disneyland too. I like Disneyland, but Orlando for me is a little bit of the buzz more.
It is the biggest one. I get it.
Yes.
And, to your point on the Polynesian, yes, it's an expensive property.
Yes.
Beautiful. So to your point of like, now that you're a parent and seeing what sacrifice that some families do to go to
yes.
quote unquote the magic, it is not lost on us, right? Like I want to make sure that, the socioeconomic, no matter where you are in the spectrum, like how are we making it more accessible and giving it an opportunistic environment for people from everywhere, and I think Disney continues to think about that and finding ways to make sure that you could experience some quote unquote magic in different parts of our portfolio, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, you can't go to Disney World or Disneyland, but we might have pop-up experiences here or there, or why we have Disney Plus as a streaming service to make sure our content is there and accessible more to the masses and now globally. So I know Bob Iger and team definitely are thinking in that way. So
we're definitely have to have you come back because I want to know more details about the inner workings of how do you get that behind the scenes and those apartments that the really rich celebrities get to stay in, and
Charlene says she wants
as
to
well
hook
as
up.
how do we book the Magic Kingdom for ourselves and nobody else can get in there, right? So maybe next time we can talk more about the inner workings of Disney and how the average person can win a lottery for that.
The tip and tricks is always a thing that I get asked.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Awesome. Allison, you go ahead. Yes.
so I'm just curious, how did you get into the work that you're doing now?
Great question. So yeah, being born and raised in Dallas, I also went to SMU, and like media wasn't anything I could even think of as a career. So I graduated my degree in finance. So in my head, I was like, okay, I need to be a trader or financial analyst somewhere. And, my parents immigrated from Thailand. So that mentality of my parents, to be honest, probably have no idea what I still do, right? They just know I make money and I'm okay. But in my head, when I was going through college, it was just like, I need to be a business person. And that's an entrepreneur. That's what my father is. And I think having a background in finance is what I needed. I remember my junior year of college being like, I don't enjoy it. Like I probably do have a math mindset, like more analytical in that manner, but I didn't enjoy it. But nonetheless, kept going because I was like, I need to make my parents proud and I need to be able to just afford a lifestyle. So after college with a finance degree, I was like, I want to move to New York City. Born and bred in Dallas, love it enough, but I needed to get out of Texas. It's like, needed some additional life experiences. So I looked at jobs and I became a financial analyst at first. That's what got me to New York City for Spiegel Brands. It's actually a fashion company, and I reported into the CFO, and I did that for a year, and I liked it and it was fine, but it didn't get to flex my interpersonal skills. I knew that I was able to do reports or things in the planning phase of that industry, but it wasn't enjoyable to me. So what I had to take at 22, rethink what I needed and how I can live a lifestyle in New York City. So I budgeted and, okay, Lily, this is what I can do. This is what I can make. But what makes me happy? And that's sports. And who's the great leader in sports is ESPN. So when I went online and I honestly looked at different roles, Bristol, Connecticut is where our headquarters is.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very farmy town, like very small. I knew I would not thrive there. But then there was an arm of, back in the day, it used to be called customer marketing and sales. And that was a division, which now I'm in New York City. And it was their media arm, which is working with advertisers with the ESPN content. So I did the blanket apply online, which I know, and I tell people early on in their career, right? Like networking is key, but also always shoot your shot. You never know what's going to happen, right?
Wow.
I put it out there. I applied online. I had an interesting, weird, like, people usually are English majors, communications, advertising majors, but I had a finance background there. And I had like 2 years of work experience by this time. And I just put it out there in the world. And then I met someone responded to me online, but then I was working out at my gym. I met another female who was like a D1 athlete. She was a tennis player for Syracuse. And we just hit it off because we liked the sports environment or like that kind of training. And she was like, I moved from Bristol, Connecticut to New York City. And I was like, wow, I just applied, and just putting things out there and saying my passion from sports, but just being open to hearing what kind of jobs are out there. I went when the recruiter reached back out to me, they're like, I don't have a job for you right now, but do you want to do an informational interview with this team that's, more on our linear network at that time, just ESPN and ESPN2. And I went for the interview, and a week later, they're like, I have an opening. I think you'd be great for this job. So I took, at that point, a pay cut in my career, but I was like, it's ESPN. I'm going to do it. Right. I did negotiate because, as women and what we're talking about, we need to know our self-worth and know that, hey, in the end of the day, we got to ask for whatever we want, like what we think is our worth. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. And I know I could have even been better in early on in my career, but where I'm at now, I definitely always tell people to advocate for themselves, especially women, women of color. Like, I suffer from imposter syndrome. I honestly feel like sometimes, like, how did I get here, or why am I here? Like, is it because this other mentor of mine, that's honestly a lot of white men in our industry, especially at ESPN, got me into the places I did, and I need to have my brain rewired of, no, I got here because of me, and so sorry, I got into the industry that way. It's like blind luck of, hey, just what makes me happy, what am I passionate about, identify it and just kind of go for it. And I then landed into media because of that, and haven't looked back, because I didn't realize how much it does marry my interpersonal skills, my analytical skills, and I guess I'm good at it because I've been in it.
I love
Awesome.
it.
So I got a few questions to ask you. One of which I'm going to ask you is, what is your leadership style, and how do you bring the people that you work with as being a mentor for them as well?
Love that question. I lead by example. It's my number one thing. I don't realize there's nothing big or small that I won't do. Right. And I try to inform that to my team as well, to be like, hey, number one, I care. I am an empathetic leader. I do, when we were all talking about the second shift, and like, how do you balance life? Like, I'm a leader that wants to, for better or for worse, I want to know all about what motivates you, what boundaries you need to put into place, and how can I help in the end of the day, right? Like, so I do lead in my work ethic in that way. And I think a lot of we're doing end of year review right now, which is funny. I just had my team submit their these 4 buckets, and then I have to respond and see how they performed this past year. And one of them, for people managers like myself, they ask, like, how do you think you did this past year of leading your team? And so I do say lead by example, and it's just like making sure I'm asking the right, or probing, just so they feel comfortable in sharing everything that makes them tick or motivate, like from both sides of the coin, to make sure that I feel that they can trust me, and they're willing to bring me on their journey of life and not just work. So I think
Awesome.
that's
And my second question is, well, I actually got really 2 real quickly. One is, let me just skip to the real good deal. Like, I love Get Up on ESPN. Let me just say that, right?
Yes.
So I think you guys do a good job, meaning Disney does a good job with that show. It's a little interesting sometimes. I was post call today, meaning I worked last night, so I was able to watch it a little bit. And when I saw the Greenberg guy start almost crying about Aaron Rodgers, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is real," about his Achilles injury. And then RG3 they were fighting with another, co-host on there about Aaron Rodgers. I thought it was funny about how they need, the team needs to find a new quarterback. I thought it was really interesting, but I like the dynamics of just the free flow of ideas that happens with that show. So I just want to give a shout out to that from Disney, to be honest with you.
Appreciate.
Yes, but I also wanted to ask you something quickly. You mentioned Bristol, Connecticut. The oldest kind of amusement park is that Compounds Place.
Great compound.
Yeah, right.
We go there.
Yeah, how does Disney feel about that? I mean, is that that's not owned by Disney, of course. I think it was big back in 1846 or something, long time ago. How does it still exist? Right? That's the
Wait,
question.
so what is it?
It's
What
a
It's an
theme park.
amusement park.
It's an amusement park, and it's funny that she knows about like
Oh,
compound. It's like, so we have our ESPN The Picnic, which is like a
Mhm.
company like offsite. It's always like the last week of August before back to school, and we close it out. I don't know, so I'm sorry, I can't really answer your question, but I don't know much about it. It's still,
Mhm.
since I guess
Exists.
for Connecticut like residents to enjoy some kind of theme park. But yeah, Disney
Right.
doesn't have any.
Well, my son went to Endicott for a minute, so I know I had to research a lot of stuff in that area. Endicott is about 20 miles out of Boston, so
Okay.
you guys are about 100 miles out of Boston. So it's almost like in that area of the country, the Northeast, everything is so close, so you get to figure out like what's all around this whole place, right? So, but my last question is, and I don't mean to hog up all the questions, is like I think if I'm saying this correctly, you and Dr. Matthews went to all girls high school, correct?
Correct.
yes.
So I did too. And when you said finance, I said I think it's interesting at times that when women go to all girls high schools, they get that confidence in math. Because not all women get that confidence, but I know I had that. How do you think you got that confidence in math, that you could own it and that you were good at it? Do you think it helped to go to all girls school?
Yeah, definitely. I feel
Yes.
Ursuline was, and looking back now, I thoroughly appreciate that those formative 4 years
Mm-hmm.
really was the crux of how I am as a person today. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
all my quote unquote sisters from that school, they're doing phenomenal things and they're
Mm-hmm.
wanting to give back to their community and doing just a lot more. And I know you're asking about the math question, but I think just I can't give any more like shout out and love to what Ursuline did for me. From a math standpoint, I think honestly, since my family speaks Thai and like math, it was like it's another language, right? And my parents, my dad owned a jewelry business and I had to work with him counting money. So I think math was always in my vein, but like English wasn't really good because, my oldest brother, I'm one of five kids. He almost got pulled into ESL and then my dad was like, okay, we need to start speaking English in this household. So me being the youngest, my Thai is not as good as my brother, but I think just by default math just started to excel in my brain because I know that's where my parents were able to, help me and kind of lean into it. But I definitely think Ursuline was, they're a math and science, but I do think they formed us into strong people and individuals. And so I'm forever
It,
grateful.
I think the other unique thing about all girls schools, and I guess Ursuline in particular, was the fact that we didn't have to compete against boys. Like it was just us. Like we weren't even worried about boys. Like, in the classroom, at least, like you didn't have to, like, I feel like I've heard from women who've attended co-ed schools that the boys got more attention. They got called on more. They were like encouraged more to pursue science and math. Whereas at Ursuline, like I wasn't necessarily in the math track, but I was more in the science track, and I really enjoyed. Like I was encouraged to pursue a career in medicine. I was encouraged to pursue science and things like that. Whereas I don't know if I would have been pulled to the side like that if I were at a co-ed school. So I just feel
I
like
Yep.
it's all girls is just like I'm a proponent for going to for single sex or same sex schools when you're younger, just because of that.
So I agree with that. I know that Nicole Hannah Jones said that too. I think she went to all girls high school at least. So yeah, I just want to say that I think that confidence in math is really important. So when kids go to a co-ed school, I think we need to let girls know, um, you know, how to get that confidence, because many times the teachers don't, give them that confidence in math. So I just want to make that point. But yeah, awesome. Um, my question to you is, how do you, how what is work-life balance? What does work-life balance mean to you?
Great question. I know coming off the heels of the life after COVID is even more important, and a lot of talk we talk about it as leaders too, and to try and figure out what that is, accountability, and also being able to be flexible as and as an employer to that. So for me personally, work-life balance, very important to me, right? Like I do, as Allison mentioned, I'm a single, I don't have children. I'm not looking to have children. So I made that um point in life, so I'm more vocal about it in the workplace, because I do, but that means that I lean so forward on parents, male or female, to be honest, that I want them to be able to have a true work-life balance with their children and their family space, and then also working. For me, since I need to work on work-life balance a little bit more. I work a lot. I think COVID helped me tremendously to reset. And candidly, I had to move out of New York, right? Like I think I was working a lot because there is no off button in New York City. But in LA, I am much happier and I think more balanced. I know that I'm still a person. I don't know if y'all have this, but I have two phones. I have a work phone
Oh
and I have
yeah.
my phone. And the only way to put myself account, like firm a boundary, is like having that work phone still, so I could leave it and then like go do my stuff. What sets me from, I'm a very routine person too. I My outlet is work to work out. Like I need an hour out of my day to make sure that's my time. And since I do work New York hours, sometimes like I'm on calls at 6 a.m. at times I can, but then that gives me the afternoon to be more flexible. So I always say like your day and your work-life balance does not need to look like your next colleague, right? And I every year, and I'm about to do this again for my team specifically, I have a exercise of, right, like what motivates you, what are your personal time slots, like, so everyone in our team knows this. And mine, I am flexible, but it is an hour out of maybe even what you call a traditional 9 to 6 workspace that I need to go do something for as a release, and that's usually a workout. And then what we talked about at the very beginning, what Allison honestly mentioned, like, yes, I don't have children. I'm an aunt of 5 children, and I call them my kids. And my best friends have children, and I'm a very quality time is my love language. So my boundary, like, I will make time, like whatever they need, drop of a dime, like I will either fly or I'll be somewhere because I want to make sure that I'm present. So while I don't have a physical child or a human to that's why I highly respect and thank that women that are in the workforce, that are working moms, like y'all are special humans. So whatever I can do to make your work-life balance better, I'm going to do that. And I have 3 people on my team that are parents, right? And I make sure that I give them the flexibility, and I get good responses. So at least I'm doing something right, I hope. But I want to make sure that work-life balance and mental health, to be honest, is very important to me. A lot of my friends are in that line of work. So I was just in Sausalito. My best friend got her PhD psychology, and I felt like I was like, wow, I'm at a good wellness retreat. Like people are, maybe psychoanalyzing me, but I'm I'm all for it. So I want to make sure that my team has that, and because I do look at work-life balance as like the number one thing that people don't realize there's actually monetary like alignment to it, right? Like when you're looking at another job and you're like, I'm not getting this and I just need to quit because I need a promotion from a title. But I'm like, is your work-life balance right now good? Like, does your manager or director, whoever your boss is giving you that flexibility? Like, that is worth a lot of money. And you might not see it in your paycheck, but your mental well-being thanks you for that. And
Yeah.
right now,
Awesome.
I would say that I have the best work-life balance because of my boss right now, and I'm better at creating boundaries. I won't take a 6 a.m. meeting for just anybody. Like it has to be a client. You know what I mean? Like, okay, fine, I'll take a 7 or 8 here and there, but I do say no more than I did before. But I do realize I am at a level where I am able to do that. But I do tell my team, hey, you should have your boundaries too. And if it's an internal meeting and you're sitting in LA and you're trying to talk to a New York team member, just say no,
Right.
like, so I do try and push the team to think that way as well. And I'm not gonna, and I
So
will.
we definitely have to have a part two of this because I want to mention from my experience of 29 years of experience working as a physician with mostly males is that balance sometimes of being a woman that is single with no kids, sometimes the workplace men may take advantage of you because they're like, oh, you can travel like all month long. I have kids. But what they don't tell you many times, I'm speaking for my experiences, is that they get out of doing a lot of work at times because they don't mention that their wives cook, clean, and do a lot of things that maybe, we have to do for ourselves, no matter if we're married or not. So they get a lot of perks too of being married where we don't as much. So sometimes, they can put us on these tasks, these tenuous tasks sometimes that they say because you're not married or you don't have kids that you're doing tasks that maybe they wouldn't do even if they weren't married. So I just want to make that point from my
Absolutely.
experience. Like, hey, you take that 24-hour call. I got to put my kids to bed, but they don't put their kids to bed anyway.
Yep.
I just want to mention that. The second thing I want to mention is I don't know. There's a wonderful author that came out with a book about the myth of some when she was growing up, the myth of I think I'm not sure if this particular author was Chinese or but definitely an immigrant of how that myth of that you have to be the American dream and you got to be perfect. And sometimes that can cause stresses for some families.
A
And I
model
was just wondering
minority.
if you know what that book was, because I think a lot of times people when they're growing up they sometimes don't embrace their culture, and they feel as though they can't. But I think this space now in the where we are now, I think people can embrace their culture, be successful, and not have any pause about trying to keep things secret about like their families or their food or their cultures. For instance, this young author, well, she's not young, but was basically saying that her mom cooked good food, but she couldn't bring the food to school because she was going to get teased. I mean, all
Yeah.
those things are in the past. It's not in the future anymore. And I think celebrating your culture and your language is very important to many people now. And I guess my question to you is how do we celebrate that more with people of different diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, languages? How do we accept people for who they are in their brilliance?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know specifically that book, but that's me too. Right. Like if Allison remember, my mom was, right. She didn't work, but she raised 5 children to being like, hey, you need hot food. So she would drop off my lunch Monday through Friday and I did not love the smell of the noodles or the curry or the rice because I'm like, oh man. And I think the next generation normalizing, right? Like it's our parent, I'm at like almost 40, right? So it's like the generation of trying to bridge the gap of being an American, but also my parents being Thai. And now there's not that many immigrants coming, but I think we were the generation to be like, okay, I might have shied away from being this minority or being not American, but now I'm so proud, right? Like now it's like I'm so glad these stories are being told. It's being definitely celebrated, but not celebrated enough. So I think we're there at on the edge, but we could keep pushing ourselves forward. And I know from my side, especially in the workforce, like women at ESPN, first of all, I'm going to go way back. Well, not way back for whoever's listening. In 2012, Jeremy Lin went off, right?
Yeah.
Linsanity was a thing. And that was in 2012. And right, one of our anchors wrote a mobile article, which a lot at that time people weren't consuming mobile content. And it was like, oh, is there a chink in the armor?
Oh, wow.
And yes. So they were like, oh, this is a funny play on words. And we're like, okay, now you like at that point, I think Asians specifically, right, more submissive and we don't say anything. We're like going to let it roll. But I was proud of, the work for like the Asian community coming forward being like, that's not right. That's a derogatory term. Like we don't like, and someone needs to be held accountable. That writer did get terminated, but then there was a news anchor that kind of repeated that headline, and that was on the linear platform on ESPN. They ended up being, don't quote me, but something, maybe probation, but his whole thing was like, oh, my wife's Asian, like it's okay. Like to do
No,
this.
it's
It
not okay.
pissed off, not good. I remember and when our organization didn't know what to do, they brought all the Asian workers or Asian descent, and there was 5 of us. We came together, and there was only 3 women and like 2 men in this room. And the Oliver Dizon, I remember he was a Filipino background, and he was the highest minority there, and was like, I'm sorry, like I want you to feel. I just looked around the room and I was like, what is going, this is it. Like
Wow.
representation does matter. And I knew at that point, like, yes, I was early on. I was only at ESPN at that time for 2 years. I was like probably in my mid early 20s. And then I also felt bad because I was like, should I be more vocal? Am I like, I'm offended, but like I didn't want to say anything, and I just wanted to be like, oh, it's okay. So I kind of went on a preamble, but like that's just to say of, hey, things are changing, and what I'm trying to do, like bridging the gap of, hey, let's be proud of each one of our individuality from any kind of lifestyle that we lead. It doesn't have to be racial, doesn't, like your preference in totality. Like I am part of our D&I efforts. I am part of LEAD as like this inclusion group for the entire Walt Disney Company. So not just my arm. So I try to make sure that people could see that we, even as a lot of Asian women do, the imposter syndrome that I kind of mentioned, like we're vocal too. We're going to act, we're hard workers. And I know a lot of people are across the board, but we want to give everyone the opportunity. And I was selected to do this one large, like it's called our tech and data showcase. And someone did say, highlighted that, oh, wow, we have women, and yes, I was of a minority. And in my head for a second, I was like, did I get selected because I'm an Asian female leader in our organization? And then I paused, but at the end of the day, I don't care. I know I want to make sure that people see these career oriented, like work-life balance, like people that care in leadership positions. And if that's the forum, if they tap me in because of that, fine. But I know that I can back it up too, because I work hard and I know what I'm talking about. So I think it's, I'm excited for the next generation, right? Like all the things that we had to do it's a crazy time. Like the working 5 days a week, and, the lack of conversations of mental health, the lack of care and awareness about someone's different background, but now we're here. And people are like, oh, do we lean too forward? Like, are we too, I'm like, lean that way. And then like, let's course correct, because we have so many issues that we had, like generations and decades of things that weren't right, that we need to talk about and continue to lead in that way. So
you said so many things that have resonated with me, and I'm just trying to think of, I don't want to forget everything, but let me go back to the lunch example. I remember going to middle school and high school, and like my mom would pack gumbo for me, and like pack, traditional kind of African American meals. And I was also embarrassed, and I wanted to be like everybody else and just eat the school lunch. And then now I'm like, I was eating good food.
I was like, my mom loved me, actually.
My mom loved me. And I think also, you also realize that some of those kids wish their mom would do that. But then we were just so caught up in being minorities and wanting to fit in and to quote unquote assimilate, that we saw it as a bad thing, as a stigma, and we were embarrassed by it. But and then what also resonated with me was you talking about, just doing DEI stuff, right? Like I'm curious, do you get paid extra for that, right? Like we are expected to do our full-time jobs and then volunteer to do all this stuff to like make sure that the company is reflecting our experiences, but oftentimes we don't get compensated for that. So that is a type of second shift also, right? Like it's a minority second shift that like we have to constantly, and I think it's important, right? Like we do it because we care and we know it's important, but it's also an extra burden that other communities don't have to bear, or they choose not to, right? So I mean, it just resonates
about that,
so well.
Allison.
Yeah.
Because I
just feel like in academia, we're always asked to be on all the DEI committees and to mentor all the minority students, and and like we're supposed to be in charge of those things, right? And to a certain extent, I think we should be, right? Because we are the ones who had those experiences, but we are not compensated for those things.
Absolutely.
I got one even better for you guys. So, okay, you're a financial analyst, perfect person, right? So you go to a meeting in New York City, and because you are of color, that's DEI. No, you're just an expert that happens to be of color. That's not like DEI. I'm like, so it's sort of like, I've been at medical meetings where they have a person of color and they're like, oh, we have diversity. No, you just have an expert that happens to be of color. That's not DEI. I just think the definition of DEI has just gotten out of control. And I think it's pretty interesting. But the last question I want to ask is, one of my favorite books is by John Doerr, Measure What Matters, about the OKRs. I was wondering, do you guys use that in your Disney work?
We don't. We should. And I love reading. Send me any books. I could ask my team to read the books. Funny enough, Iger sent us the Steve Jobs book, right? And about his work, or his work style, which is
really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I need to read it.
And even the Bob Iger book was good. But a lot of it is, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to white men. Like, let's talk about other people that are in areas of true success stories that resonate. Like, I do think now, combining a lot of like with Hulu and through our mergers and acquisitions, from a gender or like women and men for right now that I'm seeing, it is pretty even 50-50. But it can be better, right? And especially within our minority groups and other, just when we're looking at all D&I think it could be better. So I think any books you have, do you recommend?
Absolutely.
I would totally bring to the team, because I think we do need to have ways to be better. And
so let's go to Apple.